In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. God sees every tear you cry, every sleepless night you endure, and every moment of doubt that weighs heavily on your heart. He watches when you put on a brave face for the world, even though you're breaking inside. He knows when you're too exhausted to pray, too weary to take another step, and too broken to believe that things will get better. You're not invisible to Him. Your pain is not unnoticed, and your struggles are not ignored. He sees it all. There are moments in life when it feels as if the world is pressing down on you with unbearable weight. You try to move forward, but every step is met with resistance. You push, you fight, you do everything you can, but nothing seems to change. The weight of disappointment, frustration, and heartache sits on your chest like a heavy stone. You wonder if anyone understands, if anyone sees, if anyone cares. And in those moments, the silence can feel deafening. You cry out to God, and it seems like there's no answer. You beg for relief, but it doesn't come. You reach for hope, but it feels just beyond your grasp. But even in the silence, God is there. Even when you feel abandoned, He is with you. Even when you question if He hears your prayers, He is listening. Sometimes it feels as though God is distant, as though He has turned His face away from you. But the truth is, He is closer than ever. He is holding you when you feel like you can't stand. He is catching your tears when they fall. He is whispering to your heart when the world around you feels too loud, too chaotic, too painful to endure. The Bible reminds us time and time again that God is near to the brokenhearted. He doesn't just see your pain from a distance. He is in it with you. He is walking through the fire beside you. He is standing in the storm with you. He is holding you up when your strength is gone. He is not a God who watches from afar. He is a God who steps into your suffering, who meets you in your darkest valley, who carries you when you cannot carry yourself. Pain can feel isolating. It can make you believe that no one understands what you're going through, that no one can possibly comprehend the weight you carry. But God knows. He knows the burdens that keep you up at night. He knows the wounds that haven't healed. He knows the silent battles you fight within yourself. And because He knows, He cares. Because He sees, He moves. Because He understands, He steps in. There are times when you may wonder why He allows you to go through such suffering, why He doesn't just take the pain away, why He doesn't stop the storm before it begins. But even when you don't understand, you must trust that He does. Even when you can't see His hand, you must believe that He is working. Even when the pain doesn't make sense, you must hold on to the truth that He is still in control. Pain is not proof that God has left you. Struggle is not a sign that He has forgotten you. On the contrary, He is more present in your suffering than you can imagine. He is the voice whispering, keep going. He is the strength in your weakest moments. He is the light that refuses to let darkness consume you. He is the hand that reaches out when you feel like you are drowning. You may be questioning how much more you can endure. You may be wondering how long you have to keep fighting. You may feel like giving up is the only option. But even now, in this moment, God sees you. He sees the weight on your shoulders. He sees the pain in your heart. He sees the exhaustion in your soul. And He is reminding you that you are not alone. He is reminding you that He is with you, that He has never left, and that He will never leave. Pain does not disqualify you from God's love. Struggle does not mean you are forgotten. Your wounds, your heartbreak, and your disappointments do not define you. God does, and He calls you His child. He calls you His beloved. He calls you chosen. He calls you His own. The night may feel long, but morning is coming. The storm may be fierce, but it will not last forever. The pain may feel unbearable, but God will sustain you. He sees your struggle. He knows you are tired and is right there with you, holding you, guiding you, loving you through it all. Pain is something we all experience at some point in our lives. It can come in many forms: physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual. It can feel overwhelming, consuming, and sometimes even unbearable. But pain is never without purpose. Even when it feels meaningless, even when it seems like it's breaking you instead of building you, there is something deeper happening beneath the surface. Every tear you cry, every sleepless night you endure, and every battle you fight is shaping you in ways you cannot yet see. Pain has a way of stripping away the distractions of life and bringing us face to face with what truly matters. It reveals things about ourselves that we would have never noticed otherwise. It tests our strength, our faith, and our resilience. It forces us to confront the deepest parts of who we are and what we believe. It pushes us beyond our comfort zones and into places we never thought we would go. While it is never easy, it is often in those painful moments that we experience the most growth. Think about the challenges you have faced in the past. At the time, they may have felt impossible to overcome. They may have left you feeling broken, lost, or hopeless. But now, looking back, you can see how they shaped you. You can see how they made you stronger. You can see how they prepared you for something greater. Every trial you have endured has played a role in who you are today. Every heartbreak, every setback, every disappointment has been a part of your journey. Pain often serves as a teacher. It teaches us patience when we are forced to wait for answers. It teaches us strength when we are pushed to our limits. It teaches us faith when we have nothing else to rely on. It teaches us humility when we realize we cannot do it all on our own. It teaches us compassion when we understand the suffering of others, and perhaps most importantly, it teaches us trust. Trust in God, trust in His plan, and trust in the fact that even when we do not understand, He is still in control. When we go through pain, it can be easy to ask, why me? We wonder why we have to suffer, why we have to struggle, why we have to endure so much hardship. But sometimes the question is not why me, but what is this teaching me? What is this pain revealing? What is it preparing me for? What is God doing in the midst of it? The purpose of pain is not to destroy you, but to refine you. It is not meant to break you down permanently, but to build you up into the person you were always meant to be. Many of the greatest stories of triumph begin with pain. The most inspiring people in the world have faced unimaginable hardships. They have walked through darkness. They have battled their demons. They have fought through their lowest moments. And yet they came out stronger on the other side. Their pain was not wasted. Their struggles were not in vain. The same is true for you. No matter what you are going through, no matter how heavy the burden, no matter how deep the wound, there is a purpose for it. Pain can also be a tool that draws us closer to God. When everything is going well, it is easy to forget our need for Him. But when life becomes difficult, when the road becomes rough, we are reminded of just how much we need His presence. Pain brings us to our knees. It humbles us. It makes us seek Him in ways we never have before. It reminds us that our strength alone is not enough, but His strength is limitless. And in those moments when we surrender our pain to Him, we begin to experience His peace, His healing, and His power in a way that transforms us. Pain also has a way of making us appreciate the good times. It gives us a deeper sense of gratitude. When we have suffered loss, we learn to cherish what we have. When we have experienced hardship, we learn to appreciate even the smallest blessings. When we have walked through darkness, we learn to find joy in the light. Pain shifts our perspective. It helps us see what truly matters. It teaches us to love deeper, to forgive more freely, and to live with more purpose. There is a process to everything in life. A seed must be buried in the ground before it can grow. Gold must be refined by fire before it can shine. A diamond must endure intense pressure before it becomes valuable. And in the same way, our pain is often part of the process that shapes us into who we are meant to be. It is not punishment, it is not meaningless suffering. It is preparation, refinement, and transformation. Sometimes we don't realize the purpose of our pain until much later. We don't see how it all fits together until we look back and connect the dots. But even when we can see the bigger picture, we can trust that God does. He is weaving everything together for a reason. He is using every trial, every struggle, every hardship to bring something good out of it. What feels like the end is often just the beginning. What seems like defeat is often setting the stage for victory. What looks like a setback is often a setup for something greater. Pain also equips us to help others. When we have been through difficulties, we are able to comfort those who are walking through similar struggles. We can speak from experience. We can offer encouragement. We can be a source of strength for those who feel weak. Our pain gives us a testimony. It allows us to say, I have been there and I made it through, and you can too. The challenges we face are not just about us. They are about how we can use our journey to lift others up. There is nothing wasted in God's plan. Not a single tear, not a single heartbreak, not a single moment of suffering is meaningless. Every bit of pain serves a purpose. It is shaping you, it is growing you, and it is leading you to something greater. The pain you feel today is not the end of your story. It is a chapter. And when the time is right, you will see how it all fits together. You will see why you had to endure what you did. You will see that even in the midst of your suffering, there was always a purpose. There are moments in life when the weight of the world feels unbearable. You go through seasons where it seems like no one sees you, no one understands you, and no one truly cares. You pray, you cry, you wait, and yet the silence feels deafening. It can feel as though you are shouting into an empty void, wondering if anyone, especially God, is listening. The loneliness creeps in, the doubts settle, and the thought begins to whisper in your mind, maybe I am forgotten. You see others moving forward in life, receiving blessings, walking in joy and finding purpose. You celebrate with them, but deep down, a question lingers. When will it be my turn? When will you hear about miracles happening for others? Doors opening, breakthroughs arriving, but in your own life, it feels like nothing is changing. You wonder if God has skipped over you, if He has turned away, if He has left you to figure things out on your own. The silence becomes painful, and the waiting becomes exhausting. But even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the moments when you feel invisible to the world, God sees you. He knows your name. He knows your story. He knows every detail of your life. Not a single moment of your journey has gone unnoticed. Not a single tear you have shed has been ignored. Not a single prayer you have whispered in the quiet of the night has been unheard. Even when you feel forgotten by people, you are never forgotten by God. Life has a way of making you question your worth. Rejection, disappointment, and failure can make you feel as though you do not matter. The people you thought would stand by you may walk away. The ones you trusted the most may let you down. The dreams you worked so hard for may seem out of reach. In the midst of it all, you may start to wonder if you even have a purpose, if you were truly seen, if you were truly valued. Wouldn't things be different? Wouldn't life be easier? Wouldn't the answers come sooner? But God does not operate on human timelines. He does not measure worth the way the world does. He does not forget those he loves, and he has never once abandoned you. Even when people fail you, even when circumstances disappoint you, even when life does not unfold the way you expected, he remains faithful, he remains constant, he remains present. There are stories throughout history of those who felt forgotten, who endured long seasons of waiting, who struggled to understand why God seemed distant. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery and wrongfully imprisoned for years. He was left in a place of uncertainty, wondering if God had abandoned him. But what he did not know was that his time in the shadows was not a punishment. It was preparation. What seemed like years of silence were actually years of shaping, years of positioning, years of divine alignment for something greater. Hannah wept bitterly as she longed for a child, feeling the pain of barrenness, while others around her rejoiced in their blessings. She cried out to God, wondering if he had forgotten her, if her prayers had been in vain. But in time, she saw that she was never overlooked. Her waiting was not wasted. Her cries were not ignored. Even Jesus, in his final moments on the cross, felt the depth of isolation as he bore the weight of humanity's sin. He cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The pain of feeling alone, abandoned, and forgotten is something that even the Son of God experienced. And yet, in that moment of deepest despair, God's plan was still at work. Even in the silence, there was a purpose unfolding. You may feel like you're in a season of obscurity, a time where nothing is moving, where your prayers seem unanswered, and where your purpose feels unclear. You may feel as though no one truly understands the depths of what you're going through. But just because you feel forgotten does not mean that you are. Just because life feels stagnant does not mean that God is not working behind the scenes. Just because you do not see immediate results does not mean that there is no plan in motion. Sometimes the greatest work happens in the quiet. Sometimes the most powerful transformations take place in the hidden seasons. A seed does not grow into a mighty tree overnight. It spends time beneath the soil, unseen, buried in darkness. But that does not mean it is lifeless. It does not mean it is forgotten. It means that it is being cultivated, strengthened, and prepared for the moment it will break through the surface and stand tall. The same is true for you. Just because you do not see progress does not mean that nothing is happening. Just because you do not feel recognized does not mean you are not valued. Just because life feels stagnant does not mean that God has left you behind. There is purpose in the waiting. There is growth in the silence. There is preparation happening even when it seems like nothing is changing. God has not overlooked you. He has not abandoned you. He has not forgotten you. He knows every struggle you face, every burden you carry, and every fear that lingers in your heart. He knows the dreams you have tucked away, the hopes you're afraid to speak out loud, the prayers you repeat over and over. He is not ignoring them. He is not dismissing them. He is holding them close, working all things together in ways you cannot yet see. Sometimes we expect immediate answers. We want to see the full picture. We want the road ahead to be clear and the path to be easy. But God works in His own timing, in His own way. His delays are not denials. His silence is not rejection. His timing is not neglect. What feels like being forgotten is often just being positioned for something greater. What feels like being overlooked is often just a season of preparation. What feels like unanswered prayers is often just an invitation to trust Him more deeply. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not insignificant. Even in the moments when you feel lost, when you feel unseen, when you feel as though the world has moved on without you, God's eyes remain fixed on you. He is writing your story, turning every page, weaving every detail together with purpose. Nothing is wasted, nothing is accidental, nothing is forgotten. Surrender is one of the hardest things for a person to do. It goes against human nature to let go, to release control, to trust in something beyond ourselves. From a young age, we are taught to be strong, to push forward, to fight for what we want, to take charge of our own destiny. Society tells us that strength is about power, about having control, about forcing things to go the way we want them to. But true strength does not come from holding on tighter. It comes from surrendering. It comes from realizing that real power is not found in our own ability, but in our willingness to let go and trust in something greater than ourselves. Surrender is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is not quitting, it is choosing to release the burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. It is making the decision to stop fighting battles in our own strength and allowing God to take over. This stepping back and admitting that we do not have all the answers, that we do not have the ability to fix everything on our own, that we are in need of something bigger than ourselves. And in that moment of surrender, true strength is found. There is a breaking point that every person reaches in life. A moment where exhaustion takes over, where the weight becomes too heavy, where the fight seems impossible to continue. The human spirit can only endure so much before it begins to weaken under the pressure. Yet in that breaking point, something miraculous happens. When we finally reach the end of ourselves, when we come to the realization that we cannot do it alone, we open the door for divine strength to enter. When we stop trying to force our way through life and surrender to God, we discover a power far greater than our own. There are moments when life feels like a battle that never ends. No matter how hard we try, no matter how much effort we put in, things do not seem to get better. The struggles pile up, the burdens grow heavier, and we find ourselves trapped in a cycle of stress, fear, and exhaustion. We pray but still worry. We believe but still try to control everything. We trust but only as long as things go the way we want them to. And in doing so, we hold ourselves back from experiencing the peace and strength that come from true surrender. The hardest thing about surrender is that it requires faith. It requires us to believe that even when we let go, things will not fall apart. It requires us to trust that even when we cannot see the outcome, God is still in control. It requires us to stop relying on our own understanding and lean into something greater. That kind of trust is difficult, especially when life has taught us that we have to fight for everything, that nothing comes easy, and that we must always be in control. But control is an illusion. No matter how hard we try, no matter how much we plan, no matter how much we prepare, there are things in life that are simply beyond our ability to control. We cannot stop storms from coming. We cannot force people to stay. We cannot predict every twist and turn that life will bring. And the more we try to hold on, the more we exhaust ourselves in a battle we were never meant to fight alone. Surrender does not mean doing nothing. It does not mean sitting back and waiting for everything to magically fall into place. It means doing what we can and then trusting God with what we cannot. It means releasing the worry, the fear, the anxiety, and replacing it with faith. It means choosing to believe that even when things do not go the way we plan, they are still going the way they are meant to. It means accepting that our strength is not enough, but God's strength is limitless. When we surrender, we make room for peace. We make room for clarity. We make room for wisdom beyond our own understanding. Instead of spending our energy worrying about what we cannot control, we use that energy to grow, to heal, and to move forward. Instead of being consumed by fear, we are filled with faith. Instead of fighting battles that drain us, we allow God to fight for us. There are countless stories of people in history who found their greatest strength in surrender. Those who tried to fight their own battles, who exhausted themselves in the struggle, only to discover that the moment they let go, the moment they handed it over to God, everything changed. Their circumstances may not have shifted immediately, but their perspective did. Their hearts did. Their spirits did. And that shift allowed them to walk in a strength they never knew was possible. Surrender is an act of humility. It is admitting that we do not have all the answers, that we do not have everything figured out, that we are not meant to do this alone. It is a recognition that our strength has limits, but God's strength has none.